Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good morning, everyone. My name is Hasif Aiman bin Tua. I'm from Oil and Gas Engineering from Group DH243 to be matrix number 2021117541. And today, my topic will be about democracy. Democracy is a form of government in which people have authority to choose their governing legislator. The decision on who is considered part of the people and how authority is shared among or delegated by the people have changed over time and at different speed in different countries. But they have included more and more of these inhabitants of all countries. Cornerstone included freedom of assembly, speech, inclusiveness, and equality, membership, consent, voting, right to life, and minority right. Democracy, literally ruled by the people. The term is derived from Greek demokratia, which was coined from demos and kratos. In the middle of 5th century, uh, to denote the political system that existing in some Greek city-state, notably Athens. The etymological origin of the term democracy hint at a number of urgent problems that go far beyond semantic issues. If a government or by the people, a popular government, is to establish, at least five fundamental questions must be confronted at the outset, and two more are almost certain to be posed if the democracy continues to exist for long. There are five or more characteristics of democracy. The first one is election, transparency, individual right, majority rules and minority right, cooperation, and compromise. An election is a formal group decision making process by which a population chooses an individual or multiple individuals to hold public office. Elections have been a usual mechanism by which modern representative democracy that has been operated since the 17th century. Transparency promotes accountability and provides information for the citizen about what their government is doing. Information is maintained by the federal government is a national asset. Establishing up a system of transparency, public participation, and collaboration. This kind of openness will strengthen democracy and promote efficiency and effectiveness in the government. An individual right is a person's freedom to act in the social environment. It can also be defined as any action or behavior that individual can freely undertake. Rights are essential for a society to function properly. They are normally set by laws and enforced by the government. There are many different rights in democracy. It is the political system that protects basic this right the most. The basic individual rights such as right to vote, to work, to live, and to have family, among other fundamental rights, are prohibited or limited by a government. The country might not be living under democratic principle. In a genuine democracy today, majority rule is both endorsed and limited by the supreme law of the Constitution, which protect the right of the individual. Tyranny by minority over the majority is barred, but so is the tyranny of the majority against minorities. The fundamental principle of constitutional democracy, majority rule coupled with the protection of the minority right. Majority rule is limited in order to protect minority right, because if it left unchecked, it would probably use to oppress person holding unpopular view. Unlimited majority rule in a democracy is potentially just as despotic, just as the unchecked rule of an autocrat or elitist minority political party. Generally in life, in the particular of political arena, especially in politics under democracy, cooperation and competition are de rigueur, and in democracy they compete to obtain power, and then after the competition is over, you cooperate to use that power for the common good pro bono publico. While the rules of cooperation are rather well understood, judging by how well people live together, the rules of compromise are not, judging by how quickly people disagree, quarrel, and even fight after a competition. In international politics, the compromise most often discussed are usually regard nefarious deal with dictators, such as Neville Chamberlain's appeasement of Adolf Hitler. The compromise is to make a deal between different parties where each party give up part of their demands. In argument, the compromise is concept of finding agreement to communication through mutual acceptance of terms, often involving variation from the original goal or desires. We have four basic form of democracy, which is representative, direct democracy, presidential democracy, and parliamentary. Representative democracy involves the election of government officials by the people being represented. If the head of the state is also democratically elected, then it is also called a democratic republic. Most common mechanisms involve election of the candidate with a majority or plurality of the votes. Most Western countries have the system implemented in their country. Direct democracy is a political system where citizens participate in decision making personally, contrary to relying on intermediaries or representatives. The use of the ballot system, a characteristic of Athenian democracy, is unique to direct democracy. In this system, it is important that the essential governmental and administrative tasks are performed by the citizen picked from the lottery. A direct democracy gives the voting population the power to change the constitutional law, put forth initiative referendum and suggest for laws, give binding order to elected officials, such as revoking them before the end of the elected term, or initiating lawsuit for breaking a campaign promises. Parliamentary democracy is a representative democracy where the government is appointed by or dismissed by representative as opposed to the presidential rules, wherein the president is both head of the state and the head of the government and elected by the voters. Under parliamentary democracy, government is exercised by delegation to an executive ministry and subject to ongoing review, check, and the balance by the legislative parliament elected by the people. Presidential democracy is a system where the public elect the president through free and fair election. The president serves as both the head of the state and the head of the government, controlling most of the executive power. The president serves for a specific term and cannot exceed that amount of the time. The president has direct order over the cabinet, specifically appointing the cabinet member. The president cannot be easily removed office by the legislature, but he cannot or remove member of legislative branch any more easily. This provides some measure of separation of power. In consequences, however, the president and legislature may end up in the control of separate parties, allowing one to block the others and thereby interfere with orderly operation of the state. This is why a reason why presidential democracy is not very common outside America, Africa, and Central and Southeast Asia. There is also the variant of the form of democracy, which is the constitutional monarchy, which is applied in Malaysia or Thailand, and republic, liberal democracy, socialist, and anarchist. According to Daniel Trisman, there is a strong and consistent relationship between higher income and democratization and democratic survival in the medium term from 10 to 20 years, but not necessarily in shorter time window. Robert Dahl argued that market economy provide favorable conditions for democratic institutions. A higher GDP correlate with democracy, and some claims with the wealthiest democracy have never been observed to fall into authoritarianism. The rise of Hitler and of the Nazi in Weimar Germany can be seen as obvious counterexample and can be seen although in early 1930s Germany was already an advanced economy. Democratic equality is the idea that one requirement of treating person as equal is that all citizens ought to be treated as equal citizens. If social and political inequalities undermine relation or equal citizenship, then such inequality are unjust according to democratic equality. The democracy promotes all citizens to enjoy basic liberties that equality of wealth and income be kept within limits. Some philosophers have argued that international society resembles domestic society, and that for this reason, conception of injustice appropriate to domestic society, including democratic equality, ought also to be applied into international society. It is also theorized that education promotes stable and democratic society. Research shows that education leads to greater political tolerance and likelihood of political participation and reduced inequality. One studies that increase in level of education improve level of democracy, and that democratization effect of education is more intense in poor country. It is commonly claimed that democracy and democratization were important driver of the expansion uh, of primary education around the world. However, new evidence from historical education trends challenge the assertion. Analysis of in historical student enrollment from 109 countries from 1820 to 2010 find no support for the claim democratization increased access to primary education around the world. It is true that transition to democracy coincides with acceleration of expansion of primary education, but the same acceleration observed can be observed in countries that remain non-democratic. Scholars have argued that process of democratization may be elite-driven or driven by authoritarian incumbent as a way for those elite to retain power and meet popular demand for representative government. If the cost of repression are higher than cost of giving away power, authoritarian may opt to democratization and inclusive institution. I think that's all for me. I hope you learn more about